Hi guys, welcome back. I'm Anna Yudin. I'm a doctor of clinical psychology and an author, and today I have kind of a strange topic. For the occasion of Valentine's Day, I thought I would talk a little bit about dating apps. So I have made a video on dating apps in the past. I probably unlisted it since I get self-conscious about videos that are a couple years back, but I was thinking I should do a revamp of the research on dating apps. And I was looking through a critical analysis of all the research, which, if you don't know, those typically summarize and assess dozens of different research articles on a specific topic. And I was jotting down my notes. I was thinking, okay, how can I talk about this on YouTube? And then it occurred to me, this critical analysis would actually be really helpful, specifically to get people to understand how they can use dating apps in a way that maximizes their chances of finding love. So today I'm going to be telling you how I would use dating apps in the year 2024 if I were looking for love on dating apps. And if you know me, you know I am very, very happily married, so that is not the case, but I thought if this is helpful for any of you. Before we get into that, I just want to tell you I have a big Valentine's Day sale on all of my products. So you can get the paperbacks of my journaling workbooks for 40% off. It was previously $14.99, now it's $8.99. As for my novel, the lowest that Amazon would let me price it is $11.59, so that is definitely the lowest that it is ever going to be. I also have a promo code for my course where you can find 4+ hours, lessons, exercises, journaling prompts, and so forth on how to improve your relational life. So the code for that is VDaySale. All of these links will be in the description. All right, so the structure of this video is going to be as follows. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about understanding people's motives on dating apps and how to use that to figure out who has the same motive as you of basically finding love, finding a relationship. Then I'm going to talk about how I would try to put my best foot forward in terms of concrete things I would include on the dating app, like photos and bio and things of that sort. And then I would talk about how I would try to turn a match into a relationship. So let's get into it. So motives. You have to first and foremost understand people's motives on dating apps. The research has shown that there are a few different types of motives that people have on dating apps. It actually isn't that everyone wants something casual like we tend to assume about dating apps. Some, of course, do want casual relationships. Some do also want love. Many just want a little excitement and someone to communicate easily with in their day-to-day life to sort of offset feelings of boredom and loneliness. I think we are all noticing that we live in a very lonely society where it's very difficult to feel connected with other people. And dating apps are a really simple way to get some of that connection kick. You know, it's so simple. You just download an app, put some photos on there, and then you are in contact with dozens and dozens of people. Some people also want self-validation. So there are some people who go on these apps just to get a bunch of matches and a bunch of responses, maybe even to chat with people in a way that validates their self-esteem. They're not necessarily looking for connection. They're not looking for something serious. They're not looking for something casual. They just want a little kick of their ego. So this article that I talked about, this critical analysis, said that up to 70% say they are not on these dating apps just for sex. Women tend to use dating apps more for friendship and for self-validation, while men tend to use it more for sex and relationships. Men also tend to use them more for casual relationships. Sexual minorities also tend to be more in search for something casual. People who have dark triad personalities, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, narcissism, particularly the first two, studies show that they use these apps more for something casual and to acquire social or flirting skills. So given these different motivations on dating apps, how would I know if somebody is likely looking for love versus any of the other things that I mentioned? The first thing is that I would pay attention to how responsive they are. If somebody is not responsive at all or doesn't really seem to be putting much effort into the communication, then they're probably there for validation. Right? They swiped on you. They clearly thought you were attractive. They're on a dating app, but they're not pursuing it further. There's a good chance that they just want that kick of, ooh, I'm wanted. Somebody who's interested in a relationship is also probably going to ask you about yourself, about your history, about your current life, because they are trying to build an intimate connection with someone. They might want to increase intimacy by taking things off the app and texting on the phone, calling on the phone, FaceTiming, going on a date. You know, they're not going to just stay on the app forever and just keep it that way. They're going to want to actually see you in person. I would also pay attention to what they have on their profile. Things that indicate a person might not be looking for love is if their profile is all very appearance related, very sexual, where it's clear that they're flaunting their body, or they're not really showing much of their personality. There's a good chance they're not there for love. They might be there for something more casual, or again, for just that excitement and validation. Similarly, if they don't have a lot of personalized information in their bio, it might show like, oh, I thought that my photos could just speak for themselves. I'm just looking for something physical. I'm not actually on here trying to get to know other people and trying to have other people get to know me. Sometimes people will also flat out say in their bio, not looking for anything serious or in a relationship or things like that. So obviously that is a big giveaway that this person is probably not here for love. You know, I often talk about how everything that we do on social media is a mirror for what we do in real life. In real life, if someone were ignoring you when you talk to them, were completely just focused on their looks and weren't telling you about who they are as a person, asking you about you as a person, if they weren't actually trying to arrange a date, then you would probably get the message very quickly that, okay, this person is not genuinely interested in dating me. It's the same on social media. It's the same on dating apps. If you're ever struggling to make sense of signs technologically, like you're kind of struggling to understand what someone means on social media, just ask yourself, what would be the equivalent of this in real life? And if it were in real life, what would I do? Would I continue to engage with this person? Or would I say, this person doesn't seem to be into me? Now, how I would put my best foot forward to maximize my chances of love on these apps? Well, it's been a long time since I've ever been on dating apps, but last time I checked, there was like an age range and a geographical range. So something that I would definitely not do is stretch that out too far to the point where I wouldn't actually date the people in those ranges. You know, if you're 23, for instance, and you put your age range to be, 18 to 40, if you wouldn't actually date an 18-year-old or a 40-year-old, then don't make that your age range. Don't come at it from a place of scarcity or greed of like wanting as many matches as possible. Think about, okay, who would I actually see myself ending up with, and then decide based on that. Similarly, geographical location is super important. One of the biggest predictors of love is proximity, because who we are in closer proximity with, like physically, geographically, we're more likely to see more often, and the more we see someone, the more of a positive impression we have of them. I talk about this in the connection course, that this is why people tend to be really good friends with their roommates, their neighbors. They tend to date people who live in a certain neighborhood as them, or at least a certain city, because the more opportunities you have to interact with person, the easier it is to interact with these people, the more you're going to have a connection with them probably. Of course, there are exceptions. I'm sure there are people who are going to rush to the comments to tell me about their long distance relationship. I get it. I've been in one too. I'm talking about general trends. So that's one thing. I wouldn't go too far out in terms of age range, and I wouldn't go too far out in terms of geographical location. Might not even include suburbs, for instance, because I know I'm probably not going to want to drive 30 minutes back and forth for a date. Second thing about how I would put my best foot forward is I would be smart about understanding respectability politics. Some people are going to get mad at me for this, but I do think there's something to be said about keeping in mind the sorts of biases and prejudices that people are going to have about you based on the way that you present yourself. Women in particular, if you're dating men, you need to be very aware that a lot of men will categorize women's respectability based on very mundane things like what they wear, how they look, the types of photos that they post. And I used to be the type of person to think, well, fuck that, if somebody is going to judge me for the way that I look, then I don't want that person in my life anyway. But the more I've grown up, the more I've realized that even the best of us can't really outrun the biases that are drilled into us. We might still respect someone, treat them respectfully, but on some level, if there are certain signals that we have internalized are not respectable, we might put them in a different tier than other signals. So regardless of gender, I think if you're portraying yourself in a very sexual way on these dating apps, that's going to attract mainly casual sort of energy. It's probably going to signal to people, I'm not really here for something very serious. I'm looking just to have fun or to experience pleasure. The other day I was on a ski gondola, and there was this group of guys who were all wearing suits down the slopes. And me and my family were looking at them and we're like, wow, that's so cool. They're matching. It looks funny when they're all skiing or snowboarding down in their suits. When I tell you, the second they started talking in the gondola, I was so annoyed. There was one of them that was saying something along the lines of, oh, I went to this wedding and there were a lot of really respectable women. And I'm not really looking for a respectable woman, if you know what I mean. And then he went into actually talking about how when he's on dating apps, he will specifically look for women who are not respectable because he's presumably looking for something casual. And this actually connects to what I found in this article, which is that women tend to look for men who are more educated on these apps, and men tend to look for women who are less educated. And I wonder if that's related. I wonder if on some level men feel like the less educated a woman is, the less respectable she is. So you got to be realistic about the way that people are going to perceive you. And if you want to play this strategically and maximize your chances of finding the right person for you, then you might want to portray yourself in ways that are societally respectable. What does this mean concretely? I would select flattering photos where you look cute or handsome or pretty or beautiful, but not overtly sexual. I wouldn't go for an energy that's like a sexy photo. I might show a photo of me wearing maybe a cocktail dress, maybe form-fitting jeans, maybe a flowy skirt, some makeup, but not too much. For men, I might go with a nice shirt or a button-down, tailored pants. And regardless of gender, I would absolutely recommend smiling, looking friendly, looking happy. I do think I would include photos of my social life, but I used to see this all the time. Please don't just include photos of you with other people, especially if they're significantly more attractive than you, because it is very obvious to people when you are posing with an attractive friend as a way to sort of trick people into thinking that you are that attractive friend. It seems insecure, and honestly, it's like borderline catfishy, so own what you got and don't worry about the rest. And if you're going to show your social life, I would recommend showing settings where you're, with other people, like at a party, at a pop-up, traveling, etc. Maybe like 1 or 2 photos of you with some friends or with a friend, but definitely not all of them. And definitely don't try to trick people into thinking that you're more attractive based on the people that you're with. Some things that I would try to avoid: no fish. Men, please. I don't understand. What's with the fish photos? I don't understand. So many men do this, and a lot of women are baffled by it. No rave outfits, no mirror selfies, no gym selfies, no topless or bikini pictures. Look, I don't make up the rules. I'm not saying the rules should be like this, but I'm saying if you want to play the respectability politics game, these are probably some things you might want to consider. Something else that's really important, I would really make sure to evoke your personality and your hobbies in the photos. So like if you like hiking, if you like traveling or swimming, show photos of you in those settings doing those things. It's kind of a conversation starter. If you're a student, showing you on a campus quad. If you love pets, show a photo of you with your pets. If you like exploring and having good food and drinks, maybe a photo of you at Christmas pop-up. The setting should provide context, not just you. If it's just a beautiful headshot of you, then it's like, okay, this person's beautiful, but who are they? I don't really know much about them. Now, as for the bio, I would try to strike a good balance. Not too long, not too short. Don't put too much effort into it, but don't put too little effort into it. Not too quirky, where you're trying to be funny and light, but also not too aggressive, where you're like laying down the law. I've seen some crazy Tinder bios in, there's this series that Cody Ko and his wife do reacting to some of these Tinder profiles. So good. So good. I highly recommend. There are some made up examples of bad bios. Not looking for anything casual. If you are, swipe left. I don't do coffee dates. Sober. Vegan. Okay. Why I don't love this one. It's very blunt and kind of aggressive. It tells people what you are and aren't looking for, but some people might be so off-put by your tone that they're actually going to troll you. There's a gentler way to say this. Like one of my friends, I think she put in her bio one time, "I'm looking for my wife," which is like, it's silly, it's blunt, it's much less aggressive than saying, if you want something casual, then swipe left. I also think it's kind of tricky to strike a balance between speaking about the things that are important to you and not just listing off identities that don't mean much on their own. For instance, just listing sober, vegan, plant-based, a therapist, etc. Like all these things, they paint a picture about who you are, but you're more than your identities. You're more than just these labels. Another example of a bio I wouldn't recommend. 21 years old, Fort Lauderdale. It's so simple and has so little effort put into it that it makes me feel like this person isn't truly looking for love here. They're not truly looking for connection because I don't know anything about them based on this. And here's a third example of one I would not recommend. I'm looking for Borat voice, my wife. I was born in California, but I've lived in Washington for the past 7 years when I enrolled in the military. Don't worry, I'm not like those other guys. I'm a cool, calm, collected guy. Message me if you want to learn more. The reason I don't like this one is it seems like it's trying too hard to be quirky and funny to the point where it's like a little off-putting. So maybe like tone down the energy a little bit and trim it down. So what do you want to put in your bio? Here are some questions that might help you figure it out. What are your values and where do you practice those values? For instance, if you are a health nut, you probably shop at Whole Foods, go to the gym, go to the sauna, cold plunge, etc. So those are things you might want to mention. You might want to talk about on Saturdays, I do the sauna cold plunge and have, what do healthy people eat? Bone broth soup, where it's very clear to the other person what your values are. Another question, what do you like to do? We're not talking about big values here, just talking about the little things. Little details can also be very evocative about who you are as a person. Like if you like certain food, certain music, certain places to travel, certain books, TV, lifestyle, etc. Contrasts make up who you are. I like this one because people sometimes aren't very contrasted. So when they do meet someone who's a person of contrast, like say for instance, a Christian who's also very open-minded, people are going to feel intrigued by that. They're going to want to know more. They're going to want to ask you questions. People love to be around those who are contrasted, who kind of keep you on your toes. You can't quite guess where they stand on certain things. And so if there is something about you that contrasts, I would try to find a way to evoke that. Another question, what do you want people to ask you about? For instance, if you really love writing, but there's nothing about you loving writing or books or any of that on your profile, people are probably not going to know to ask you about it. But if you have something on there like, I read 200 books this year, someone might say, oh my God, how did you do that? And then you start a conversation about how you're a writer. And I think the key with bios is actually you do kind of have to be a good writer because you have to show, not tell. You can't just list off who you are or go into this big paragraph of prose about who you are. You have to leave little snippets here, little details about you that draw people to want to ask more about you, that leave room for questions, but not so much room that they don't know what to ask you about, that they don't know anything about you. Does that make sense? So here's an example of what a good bio might look like. Romanian American therapist and writer. I love hiking, traveling, reading, and waking up in unfortunate hours. So kind of poked a little bit of fun in myself, basically outed myself as one of those people that wakes up at 6 a.m. naturally. There's humor, there's values, there's specific details, a little bit of my identities, but not too much where it feels like I'm just listing off things. It's just the important stuff. Lastly, how would I turn a match into love? I think it starts right when you start swiping. I would swipe right very strategically. I would consistently ask myself, if I saw this person out at a bar and they came up to me and asked me if I want to go out on a date, would I want to say yes or no? And the truth is there are certain things that you just can't tell in person versus online, that if you could see them in person, your answer might be different. But remember what I said. Everything that happens online is basically just a reflection of everything that happens in real life. Don't do anything online that you wouldn't do in real life. So in the context of dating apps, that means don't swipe right on people you wouldn't actually want to date. And then after that, say hi or wait for them to say hi. This is where Match Plus One comes in really handy. I have a video on Match Plus One, the skill to sort of deepen intimacy while assessing if the other person is reciprocating. Match Plus One is also in the connection course. I would definitely want to assess for safety. And this isn't like a how-to guide, but I feel like I'm pretty good about feeling out whether there are red flags about people, whether they're being aggressive or coercive or rude or disrespectful. Because if someone doesn't respect you, then they're probably not going to care about your safety either. I would try to assess values alignment. So trying to see, do I like this person? Do I stand for what they stand for? Or does there seem to be a really big values clash? Because as we know from the research, people don't need to have exactly the same beliefs to be together, but they do need to have the same values. If there's a values clash in a relationship, that's going to be a very long-term issue that probably can't get solved. And here's another thing, I would assess attachment style. So the research shows that people who are on dating apps tend to be more anxious and avoidant in their attachment style. And that's not really what you want. You want to have a pool of largely secure attachment style people, but it makes sense that people on dating apps might not be. So warning signs that someone has an anxious attachment style might be very fast and frequent responses. They get distressed if you don't immediately respond. They might double, triple, quadruple text you. Instantly want a date without getting to know you at all. They might be very complimentary or seem to really like you, again, before actually knowing who you are, what you stand for. Someone with avoidant attachment style might be not very responsive at all, takes hours or days to respond every single time, or just flat out doesn't respond, and just never seems to want to take it to the next step. Or if you suggest, hey, do you want to talk on the phone? They might say, yeah, and then they never follow up. Versus someone with a secure attachment style responds when they're available. Okay, so they don't respond if they're not available. They don't respond if they're at work or they're out with friends or whatever. They're also not playing games. They're not trying to prolong how long they're responding to you, and they're not forgetting about you completely. They respond with variation. Somebody that has a secure attachment style who responds when they have a chance, there's going to be some variation. Sometimes they're going to respond every 2 minutes. Sometimes they're going to respond maybe every 7 hours. And they're going to be open to meeting up, but not desperate. They're going to want to get to know a little bit about you, and maybe after a few days or a week or so, they're going to want to boost the intimacy. I have a chapter on attachment style in the connection course as well, by the way. You might also want to just flat out ask people what they're looking for on these apps. I think sometimes people are scared to do that because they're scared of pushing that person away. But here's the thing. If someone gets scared away by a simple question of what are you looking for, then they're probably not looking for love, or they have an avoidant attachment style, or they're going to get scared away at some point anyway. So why not make it early on when you can cut your losses? So signs that someone is probably not looking for love when you ask this question is they might say something casual, play it by ear, just have fun. Oh, I just got out of a serious relationship, so I'm not sure. Probably not looking for love. A person who is looking for love will not be scared that you will get clingy if they admit that. If they're scared of you latching onto them, if they admit they want a relationship, then they're probably avoidant. Then they probably aren't really ready for a relationship. And then once you've assessed, okay, this person's safe, they seem like they're compatible, they tell me they want the same thing as me, escalate. Talk to them on the phone. I think if I were looking for love in this era of my life, I would totally want to FaceTime first to get a sense for a person's body language, their tone, to make sure that they actually are who they say they are. Talking on the phone can help too, but again, you can't really assess if someone's catfishing you that way. And if you don't get any red flags, if it's a nice, lovely conversation, then meet up with them somewhere safe, somewhere public. Don't let them pick you up, because that is so dangerous for someone that you don't know. I would let a close friend of yours know where you're going, when, the information of that person, like phone number, photos, name, all of that, because even if they're lying, if something does happen, God forbid, that's important to know. Someone needs to have that information. So that's what I would do if I were on dating apps. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but I hope that this helped you in one way or another. Don't forget about the V-Day sale. I hope that you have a lovely, lovely day, and I'll see you soon.